welcome back to Table Rock Dairy. Today I am making a soap inspired by our goose Nod, who is a Canada goose that came to us as a rescue. Sorry, I just bumped the camera. 2 years ago. So I'm going to tell you what I'm making the soap out of, and then I'll let you know a little bit about Nod and his history with us. I have the wrong glove here. I can't do anything with the wrong glove. So I'm using Brambleberries Cappuccino Mica, and I'll be using that mixed with titanium dioxide as well. And for a fragrance, I'm using Brambleberries Chai Tea Sibilia. And you might be able to hear Nod in the background right now. So I've added my lye solution to this, so I'm just going to blend this up and get it to trace. I'm going to burp the blender. That's just a little bit of oil left over from the stick blender and the spatula, so I'm just going to get that back in there and mix it up a little bit. So Nod is kind of a taupe colored goose, and so this soap body will mainly be a taupe colored, but he's got some darker brown stripes on him. I keep calling it him, and I'll explain why in a minute. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make one batch that I'm using the same color, but one batch is going to have titanium dioxide in it and one won't. So, Nod, this isn't exactly the color I want, but when I saw it, in the photo about how it behaves in cold process, it looks a little more taupey after it cures a little bit, so I'm hoping we'll end up with it a little closer to what I'm after. I'm going to put a white topping on this soap, but I'll do that right now. 2 springs ago, our Sebastopol geese had babies that they hatched out. And they hatched them in sets. 2 were born, then 2 more were born, and then 2 more were born. And when the last 2 were born, the first of the 2 was kicked out of the nest sometime during the night and got really cold. And I went out and I saw him, and he looked dead. Looked like there was no life at all. But when I picked it up, its eye moved. And so I brought it in, and I had some chicken eggs in the incubator. So I brought it in, and I put it in the incubator thinking, well, it's not going to live, but at least it can die warm. And just kind of kept my eye on it. And pretty much left it alone for a couple hours. And after a couple hours, it actually looked better. And so I nursed it, and it kept getting better and better. And I left it in the incubator for a good couple of days. And it had an eye that was bad, and it looked like it was going to be blind. But I was like, as long as it's trying, I guess I'll try. So I kept it alive. And after it was a few days old, another goose out there and had hatched, but it got stuck in the egg. It wouldn't hatch all the way out. So I brought it into the incubator, and I wasn't really going to give the geese a big chance with this egg because they hadn't done so well with the last goose. So I brought that egg and put it into the incubator and put some water on it to try and see if I could get it to hatch. And I gave it about 24 hours, and it hadn't made any progress, and it looked like the baby was still alive, so I helped it hatch. And it didn't look so great. It didn't look like it was going to make it. And I ended up keeping it with the other one, and every day they looked a little better, and every day they looked like they were going to live, so I kept trying. And they were on my Instagram page and my Facebook page, and there were quite a few people following that story. And right around the same time, someone in a neighboring community, a little boy, I'm hoping you can see that, a little boy found a Canada goose. And they couldn't find its mother anywhere, and they looked, and they figured it was abandoned. And so they picked it up, brought it home, and got hold of a wildlife rehabilitationist and handed the gosling over to her. And by the time she got it, the goose was already imprinted on humans. And she figured it didn't have a great chance of being re-released into the wild as long as she was raising it, because there was no way to get it. It needed geese to learn geese ways. And so she contacted me, I guess, and asked if I would raise Nod with my orphaned geese. And I was pretty apprehensive at first because my geese were going to be tame. I wasn't trying to keep them wild. And So I was kind of like, what's the goal with Nod? What are we trying to accomplish here? And she said that at this point, anything was going to be better than her raising the goose. And so she wanted to have me take it, try to keep it as wild as I possibly could. And whatever happened, happened. That however Nod lived out, well, it wasn't called Nod. However the Canada goose lived out its life was fine. It wasn't going to be illegal if I kept the goose here, if the goose chose to stay here. So I agreed to take him, and I didn't know if it was a him or a her, and raised it with the Sebastopools. And so while I was handling the Sebastopools, I wouldn't handle Nod. And as they got older, they moved outside, and Nod wasn't handled. But I would go out and visit the geese, and so it wasn't like he wasn't being exposed to me. It wasn't the ideal situation, but it was what it was. And as they got older, my geese don't fly, so there was no way to really teach Nod how to fly. And Nod would sort of take off and fly around the farm a little bit here and there, but he definitely wasn't going to be a flying goose. But once he could fly a little bit, I didn't really lock them up as much anymore. So that if Nod wanted to leave, he could leave whenever he wanted to. There was nothing, I wasn't keeping him here. And till he was about a year old, I kept him pretty well locked up at night, but not during the day. Just because I didn't want predators getting to him. And then last spring, all the geese started to separate off, and the two orphaned geese, one of them was a female. She ended up laying eggs and sitting on a nest last year. And Nod never did. So we all sort of thought, okay, well, Nod must actually be a boy then, because there's no eggs. So we just continued with what we were doing, and no big deal. And I moved them into a pen where there's no roof on it. So at night, there's free run for Nod to fly in and out. Go wherever he wants, whenever he wants. And that's pretty much what he did. He mostly stayed with the geese, but he would fly out of there sometimes and do whatever he wanted. And at one point last spring, he actually left for 4 days. And we figured, okay, nature called, he's gone, he's not coming back. And after 4 days, he came walking up the driveway. Wasn't flying. His wings were a little bit messed up, so something had happened. He'd gotten hurt somehow. I have no idea how. And he kind of quit flying. But he would, every morning take a short little flight around the farm or whatever. And then this spring, when everybody paired off for making babies, Nod would kind of come and go from the pen. Like, he was uncomfortable in there. He didn't want to do anything. He didn't want to be around the geese as they were pairing off. And I figured, you know, maybe the other geese were being mean as they were, you know, finding their mates. I never saw any meanness, but doesn't mean it wasn't happening. And then I kept calling him a he, started hanging out by our kitchen door a lot more. And we have a barrel planter outside the door, and she kept getting in the barrel planter and hanging out and wouldn't really leave the kitchen door, stayed by the kitchen door all the time. And I was just starting to wonder if maybe he was a she, because she was doing a submissive pose periodically, and I was getting suspicious. And then I was out running errands one day, and my husband sent me a text saying that she had laid an egg. So in that planter, the barrel outside the kitchen door, there is a nest with Canada goose eggs in it. And I am 99% sure those eggs are not fertile. But I didn't take them out. I left them in there, just in case I'm wrong. But after she got on it and pretty much looked like she was going to stay on that nest, we all sort of felt sorry for her because she wasn't going to hatch anything. So we snuck a couple of duck eggs underneath her. And in a few weeks, I think about 2, I forgot to write it down. I think about 2 weeks, she will likely have 2 little baby ducklings to raise. And so that is the story of Nod. And this is Nod soap. Okay, so I'm gonna pipe the top. I'm gonna have a little embed to put on the top. So this isn't quite holding a peak yet. So I'm gonna clean up my dishes and then I'll come back and pipe it. Okay, this looks like it's pretty well set up. I'm gonna use a big round tip. This is a tip I got a million years ago from Pampered Chef. Okay, fell a little short on what I saved, but I think it'll still work. I think it'll be fine. So I hand rolled these little balls out of soap dough to represent her adorable little head. I had thought about putting a little white stripe on it. You know how Nod kind of has that little stripe on her head. So I've been busy talking about Nod this whole time, instead of very much about this soap. So I'll be able to clean that off. And I haven't mentioned how absolutely incredible it smells. So the website will be up, and hopefully by the time this video is playing, the website will be up. And there will be a link to the blog post about Nod, so you can read a little bit more about Nod. And I'll be adding to the blog post as Nod's little nest progresses. So here's our soap, and I'll be back tomorrow and we'll give it a cut. Okay, so I'm back to cut Nod soap. And as you can see, the lighting's not very good because it's late and the sun is long gone. But the top of it has become really tan colored. So somehow I missed it when I was buying the oil, that it discolors the soap. So unfortunately my white soap is not going to be white. And we'll just have to wait and see how it turns out. But this was the stripe that I did, because he's actually a little bit striped, even though it's probably hard to see that. And the colors right now are really close to what he actually is, so that's what I was hoping for. So that came out pretty good, but unfortunately my white soap isn't white. So the next time I make it, I will not put fragrance oil in that top part that I want white, and that'll keep it white. So it'll have a little bit less of an odor, you know, a smell. It'll be weaker. But I think the top needs to be white. But I'm really happy with how the stripe came out. That's exactly what I was going for. See if I can get these the right size. I'm having a hard time getting them the size I want. So this soap is 2 days old now. I didn't get a cut yesterday like I'd hoped. So there it is. Thanks so much for watching. Please give my video a thumbs up if you like what you saw. I'll see you on the next video.